big-time move in XRP.
Is there a possibility that Ripple could take over Swift one day?
Well,
we'll try and make this as concise as possible. We do have a ton to get to, so I'm just going to hop right into it. John, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Stu Alderati this morning. For those of you who don't know, Stu is the general counsel for Ripple. I'll tell you what he said, and then you can respond to what he said. So I asked, having read that the two briefs, they've been filed now, they were filed early, do you still believe Ripple to have the stronger case? And obviously he's going to say yes, he's their GC, but he says it highlights just how weak the SEC's case actually is. And it highlights the SEC's, these are his words, abject failure to identify a contract of investment, their abject failure to satisfy any prong of the Howey test, including their abject failure to identify a common enterprise. What do you think, John?
Well, I think there's a reason for Stu to be confident. And I have to tell you something. I was proven wrong already by these briefs because if people go back to my tweets a couple weeks ago, I tweeted out that when we see the summary judgment motions and they're unredacted, that we're going to see evidence that we're unaware of. And I said I probably predict that there'll be some evidence against Ripple that is more damaging than some people think. You know, I try to be as objective as possible, and I predicted that, and it's missing. I was surprised that the SEC did not have more specific evidence. You know, all the specific evidence that they pointed to was to institutional investors and accredited investors. They made no connection to XRP holders, the retail holders, you or me or people out there. You know, they spent page after page proving something that we all knew, that Ripple promotes Ripple, the company. And Ripple has promoted XRP as a bridge currency that they're hoping achieves widespread adoption. And that they've made statements about that. And that they've made statements about good stewards of XRP. They proved that Ripple owns 50% of the XRP. I mean, they didn't prove anything, in my opinion, that they haven't or that we already didn't know. And so I think there is. I was really, really surprised. I found the SEC summary judgment to be substantially similar to the complaint. Conclusory language with no detailed analysis. The problem, people, for the SEC is in order to prove an unregistered securities offering, you normally have to prove on this specific day, right? Brad Garlinghouse or Chris Larson or Ripple offered and sold XRP to these public uncredited investors, and they said all these promises and inducements that caused those public holders, if you will, to go ahead and purchase XRP. And there's none of that. The entire record is devoid of any of that. All the specifics that they have is one XRP investor who's accredited and who's an institutional investor said something good about the Ripple team. Okay, so what? That's one investor who's accredited. That's not an unregistered securities offering. And so
the way it was explained to me by Stu was that the SEC is trying to conflate the common enterprise with the common interest. And the Court of Appeals has already said that those two they're not the same thing. So, you can have a common interest in something. We obviously, and you said it yourself, the SEC, if nothing else in those briefs, proved that Ripple needs XRP to run its company. So obviously they're going to say good things about it, just like Charles Hoskinson says good things about Cardano and Vitalik says good things about Ethereum. So I think the disconnect between the common enterprise and the common interest here is a sticking point. And something else that Stu pointed out was that the common enterprise part of the Howey test, since 2018, the SEC has been trying to get rid of that. Like they came out with a digital assets framework, right? Yep. And I wrote it down because I thought it was interesting. Footnote 10 of the 2018.
Footnote 10, I know it well. Go ahead.
Yeah, it says the commission, on the other hand, does not require vertical or horizontal commonality per se, nor does it view a common enterprise as a distinct element of the term investment contract. So they're trying to prove the investment or the common enterprise, but they themselves say that doesn't necessarily mean something's a security. So it's very confusing.
Well, here's a couple of things about that. One is that they say the commission, the SEC, doesn't require a common enterprise. The law does. The United States Supreme Court does. The Second Circuit does, right? The Howey test does. And so it's consistent with Gary Gensler, sort of blending in the third, the common enterprise and the efforts of others and trying to blend that into one kind of requirement. Here's what's interesting about this case, and Ripple brings this up in their brief. When this case first started, the common enterprise was Ripple, and they were claiming that Ripple was the common enterprise and that XRP holders was in a common enterprise with Ripple and other XRP holders, right? And that we were investing in Ripple, even though we're users and we're developers and some of us are investors, all of that we're all relying on this common enterprise Ripple. Well, Ripple hit them with, a lot of people remember there were like 30,000 requests for admissions. And in those requests for admission, they destroyed the SEC because they made the SEC admit that there is no duty by Ripple to an XRP holder. There's no duty. And that an XRP holder, by owning XRP, has no legal interest in Ripple, the company. And so then they shifted gears, and in their expert witnesses started testifying that the common enterprise is the XRP ecosystem. Well, what the hell does the XRP ecosystem means? That means everybody. That means Ripple. That means you as an XRP holder, me as an XRP holder. It means Jay from Spin the Bits as an XRP holder. It means anybody. It means everybody together. But here on page, what I want to tell people is that there's always something that they write that just kills me. And on page 17, they write that the escrow account's purpose was to remind investors of the common enterprise XRP represented. So I guess XRP is the common enterprise now, according to the SEC. Or they're saying XRP represents the common enterprise. Just like when I filed that motion to intervene, and on page 24 of their opposition, they say that XRP is a representation of the investment contract. The SEC is making this shit up as they go. And that is a fact. That is not an opinion.
Just to add to that, Stu and Brad have actually both tweeted, and what Stu said to me this morning, that the SEC is just trying to rewrite the law. And I'm going to give you a quote that he gave me this morning. The SEC is really arguing that if someone buys an asset and they hope that they can sell that asset at a higher price, somehow the SEC has jurisdiction. That's not the law. And it's also illogical because then every sale of land, every sale of gold, every sale of diamond, or sale of Andy Warhol lithograph would potentially be a security. Just kind of reminded me of what you just said about the oranges and the beavers.
It really is, people, this is what they need to know is that Ripple did a good job of explaining to the court that a securities case, the obligation on the SEC is to prove transaction by transaction that it was constituted an unregistered offer and sell of a security. Each sell, that's their duty, that's their obligation. But the SEC has committed now to XRP itself, because Ripple promoted it and did all these things to help the ecosystem develop, right? Therefore is a security. And if that were to be successful from the very first day that this case was dropped, that I've been saying, then every altcoin in crypto, every single one of them, especially Ether, is a security. And I will tell you that this brief by Ripple really demonstrates that you cannot apply the Howey test and securities laws as defined by the 1933 Securities Act to modern day cryptocurrencies. So if this case does get appealed, and I believe there's a good chance that this is going to be a judgment and an appeal, Ripple's brief can be literally applied to every crypto asset out there. It's brilliant. I kind of hate it in some ways because, of things I said, but it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think we're looking at a long-term effect no matter what, right? Because, we have the Howey test. I asked Stu this morning whether he thinks there will be a replacement for the Howey test down the line called the Ripple test. He said, absolutely. He's like,
Yeah,
we're going to make it parity at the end of the day.
One thing I feel bad, because I know XR, trust me, I've seen the emails and I've talked to thousands of XRP holders, and I know how bad they want this over. And I know that they long for it to be over. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but when I saw that they were saying, people were saying, oh, because the two sides filed the briefs early on Saturday instead of Monday, that means settlement. I knew it didn't. I don't know if you had talked to Stu about any of that, but
Yeah.
it absolutely meant nothing about settlement. I don't think there's going to be a settlement unless those Hinman emails say some stuff that guarantees a victory to Ripple and they're forced to turn it over. Other than that, I think it's going to be a judgment.